Welcome, everyone, to today's PEMAC Lunch and Learn, focused on leveraging asset master data, maintenance management readiness for public sector organizations. I am Nicole Guillen. I'm the Education and Professional Development Manager at PEMAC, and I welcome you along with all of our other moderator and panelists. Cindy Snedden is here with us today, who will moderate our panel, and our experts who will be joining us to share a little bit more details on the program and the insights. And without further ado, I'll share that I will be talking a little bit about PEMAC. And then I'll pass it over to Philip Lawler, who will provide a little bit more project overview and insights. And I'll introduce our panelists as well during the panel discussion period. You'll be able to ask your questions for today's panel in using the Q&A box in our Zoom tool. So I welcome you to use at any point during today's webcast. You can post your question in that Q&A box and we'll address that during our panel discussion. For those that don't know, PEMAC is a not-for-profit professional association promoting excellence and maintenance, reliability, and asset management through collaboration, applied learning, leadership, and advocacy. There are many ways to connect, learn, contribute, and achieve recognition through PEMAC, the Canadian leaders in asset management, including our educational programs, as well as our lunch and learns and a variety of chapter events, as well as our certification and other recognition paths. We also have a national conference, the Main Train Conference, which takes place this year, September 23rd to 25th in St. John, New Brunswick. We just released our conference program, so be sure to check out our website for more information and to register for this year's webcast. Early bird registration fees are still in effect. The discounts are still available, so take a moment to review the program and register to join us in St. John's. I want to also share that not only is PEMAC connected to practitioners across the country, but we also have a global presence. We are members of the Global Forum of Maintenance and Asset Management, and we contribute to that global thinking and professional documents in the fields of maintenance and asset management. We also are able to incorporate all of that learning and information that we gather globally to our educational and maintenance management professional and asset management professional programs and the curriculum, as well as our body of knowledge and documents. PEMAC is also a founding partner of World Partners in Asset Management. Together with other like-minded associations, we work towards the global alignment and recognition of asset management credentials. We also are able to offer 3 certifications that are aligned with the World Partners in Asset Management certification scheme, CTAM, CPAM, and CSAM. I invite you to visit the PEMAC website to learn more about all of the ways you can connect, learn, and contribute both across Canada and globally. Without further ado, I will introduce our key experts today and panelists to provide more insights into the project. We're joined today by Peter Lewis, who has over 20 years of experience in public and private maintenance and reliability engineering, and he is currently the Senior Reliability Engineer and Asset Management Strategy and Maintenance Planning at Toronto Water in the City of Toronto. Peter played a significant part in our project team in the developments of all of the elements you're going to learn about today. So we're welcome Peter, who'll be part of our panel a little bit later. I also am proud to introduce Michael Adjibwe, who is the Manager of Asset Management Office in Niagara Region. Michael also has a vast years of experience across infrastructure and water and wastewater. And he played a key role in the development and delivery of the project and the course as well. So we're welcome his insights today to share more about his knowledge on the product and insights that they've learned along the way. Lastly, I'll leave it to Philip Lawler, who is the Manager of Treatment Plant Maintenance at Regional Municipality of Halton. He played a significant part in the project team through PEMAC and the Toronto TMU, and we're proud to have Philip and all of his insights to share more about the project. And over to you, Philip, when you're ready.
Take myself off mute. Thank you for that nice introduction, Nicole. So I put together a couple of slides just to give an overview of the total project. So just starting with our partners, I want to say a big thank you to the FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, who we received funding from to support this project, and also to the Toronto Metropolitan University, specifically Professor Saeed Essa, who has been a great partner in helping to develop this course, our course and the knowledge material as well. Thanks, Nicole. So just to give a bird's eye view of the overall project, we're currently in stage 5 right now, but it took us about overall 15 months to develop and deploy the project. And we started off with a national survey. The survey was quite intensive. It was over 180 questions, and we had a lot of participation across Canada. And I think we got a good sense of the state of play. Essentially, we're all, in the same boat when it comes to maintenance readiness. And it was great to just get that understanding at the Canadian level. But not just understanding what was happening, we did a lot of analysis on the information that we gathered to try and help tell a story about what the successes are across Canada and also the opportunities for improvement. From that development stage, we also moved towards the development of a curriculum of learning. It was essentially 2 courses, 6 lessons, and we deployed that across a number of municipalities across Canada. And through that process, we were able to combine the national survey information, the data analytics, with case studies from actual municipalities across Canada, and have some detailed discussions around their experiences in their own municipalities to enrich the overall story that we're trying to tell. So we took all that information, data, and experience, and we developed three papers: a white paper, a business case, and last was a practitioner's guide to help articulate and kind of formulate, all of that data and information into a kind of a succinct story to tell. But that's not the end of the journey. We're recognizing that the opportunity for maintenance readiness is quite significant, and the need for it even more so. So we're taking today's Lunch and Learn as a springboard towards a larger educate, collaborate, and grow strategy. So I want to thank everybody who was able to make it today. I'm going to go to the next slide. So about the project participants, I think it's important to recognize the scale of the project, who was involved, and what it really took to get this over the line. So when we developed the assessment, we were able to reach out to a lot of municipalities. 27 in total participated, and it was 71 staff across those municipalities. And when we looked later at the residents and the population that those municipalities serve, we identified it was nearly 17 million. It was quite a huge representation for Canada, we felt, and quite a large population, not just population, but a large group of municipalities that participated and their staff. When we developed the training courses and the 2 cohorts, we had 21 municipalities participate, and we had 52 staff join us in that. Let's say it's kind of a hybrid research and learning forum. So that was really great. And when we looked at the effort from PEMAC, TMU, and the volunteer group, all of which that I want to say great, like a huge thank you to everybody who was involved in the development and the deployment. It was a real collaboration between industry and academia. And it took 21 people together to do that. And through the volunteer groups and their home positions, it was like 15 organizations in total were involved in the whole project. So a big shout out to that team if anybody's here. One interesting aspect of the project, which I think was very useful for me, was when you look at the public sector asset management body of knowledge, it's not very tailored to how most public sectors are structured. And I felt there was a little bit of a disconnect between what we normally observe as the standard life cycles of the assets and the people who are responsible for them and what we actually see in reality. So as part of our journey through the cohort learning and the review of the national benchmarking information, we came up with this, I would say, adapted model, which better reflects how the life cycle of the assets are structured and who's responsible for them. In the context of maintenance readiness and making assets maintenance ready for maintenance, this graphic is kind of simplifying what I would say are the two distinct readiness stages. So within the life cycle planning, which is the financial forecasting, and then moving into the engineering, which is the design, acquiring, building, and commissioning, the function here is really to ensure that assets are ready for maintenance and understanding what's involved in having assets maintenance ready. But then when you move on to the operations and maintenance lifecycle stage, as we know it, there's also an obligation from that lifecycle stage to realize the value from the maintenance readiness, from the maintenance ready assets and being maintenance ready themselves. And the idea would be that if that's working really well, the decommissioning and disposal is a kind of a elongated part of the process, or it's further along than would be normally realized. So this is just a way of visualizing readiness from both sides of the life cycle stage. Thanks, Nicole. If you want to move on. So on its own, if you look at master data and resource readiness, what does that mean? And this is a bit of a tagline. What's more important is that you understand the intent. And when we looked at it, we came up with this tagline. So master data and resource readiness is the provision of all resources, data, and information so that assets are moved towards a state of preparedness for maintenance and reliability work on the first day that they are operational. And the important part here is that the assets are made maintenance ready at the same time they are operationally ready. And we understand that this is not what's happening across the board. And there are some pros and cons, mostly cons, to not getting this right. Next slide. And if we just look at then the two following life cycle stages, the operating and maintenance side, we looked at what is maintenance management readiness. And that's really about the right sizing of the maintenance function to effectively and efficiently utilize resources, data, and information to safely maintain assets in good and very good condition. And the operative word here is right sizing. It's really important that a maintenance function scales with the asset portfolio that they are responsible for. And sometimes that can be disconnected and we can run into trouble because of that. Next slide. So why is readiness important? When assets become operational, they begin to also deteriorate just through utilizing them for their function. And the deterioration can be both naturally or at a natural pace and also at an accelerated rate due to a number of factors. The consequences of failure can range from insignificant to catastrophic, and lots of organizations are unaware through innocence of what are the consequences, and then also what would be the likelihood of those consequences manifesting. So provisioning asset-specific resources earlier on in the life cycle stage really establishes the foundation that's necessary for maintenance to be effective. So for maintenance to do the right thing, it needs to be able to have access to information, data, resources, and all of that good stuff, but always relative to the assets they're responsible for. And maintenance as a function also has its obligations. It has a responsibility that if we have finance and we have engineering provisioning all of these resources, the other side is that we have to do our bit in the maintenance side. So utilization of the data, information, and maintenance management good practices really ensure that the outcome is that we maintain the condition at its optimal level, we maintain functionality over time, and if we do those things correctly, we can reduce the likelihood of failures and reduce the overall ownership costs throughout the life, and in many cases prevent premature disposal of the assets, which has lots of other benefits. So I guess the point is that organizations must seek to balance the early provisioning of resources with the capability to effectively utilize those resources during the operations and maintenance phase. And it really is a partnership across the stakeholders who operate in the different areas of the life cycle of the asset. Next slide, Nicole. So some of the benefits of integrating asset management across that life cycle, we can realize reduced risk exposure, certainly on the likelihood side of the risk component. If we purchase assets, the consequences are probably very static. Where maintenance has a lot of benefit is reducing the likelihood. It also helps to reduce reactive costs. All assets have inherent costs of maintenance. As long as they stay in the proactive end, they are not surprise costs. They should be anticipated. Also through improved reliability, operational and maintenance efficiency, reduced mean times between disposals, and reduction in environmental impact. And what does this mean? So if we consider the whole life cycle as a matter of policy, we ensure that very early on, even before the financial planning, that the organization understands the benefits that maintenance can have within the overall health and longevity of your overall life cycle. So throughout our assessments and through the national survey, we really discovered a need to have policy drive a lot of the decision-making further on. We need to invest into maintainable assets. So kind of reiterating a little bit here about providing necessary resources for the capital teams. This is slightly different, I guess, that it's not actually just provisioning for maintenance, because if you don't already do this, making assets maintenance ready is also a capital cost, because there's extra data and extra work and extra project management that's involved in delivering maintenance ready assets. But this approach really does consider future generations, and the whole life cycle cost and environmental impact as a result will be lower. We need to plan for maintenance. We need to ensure that realistic costs to maintain is included in the long-range infrastructure plans. To achieve this, we must integrate long-range capital forecasting along with the operational budgeting processes. So in other words, if we are planning 10 years ahead and we're saying, hey, you know what, we're going to install or implement $500 million worth of assets over the next number of years, perhaps there's a part of that forecast which will include additional maintenance costs, which will help understand what that might mean to the operational budgeting further along, so that when operations is budgeting on their yearly cycle or, you know, in a longer range, they don't just think about inflation, they think about the asset portfolio and expansions and, you know, new assets that might also have an impact on maintenance budgeting. So it's important to have a holistic view on budgeting and forecasting from both CapEx and OpEx. We need to effectively manage our maintenance program. So having an effective maintenance program ensures that we grow good practices. Part of that involves having systems, training, and performance management in place. And last but not least, it's very important for us to be able to leverage and utilize data that we collect over the life cycle of the assets, particularly in the operate and maintain life cycle, to help us make decisions about the optimization of how we do maintenance, but also using financial data, reliability data to actually make do analysis around its condition, and using that data then to make decisions about disposals. So it creates a feedback loop, ensuring that data and information becomes valuable to the organization, which then in turn ensure that we have more accurate data processes and the collection of that data all the way from the equipment master data or drawings to the, sorry, I should say drawings first. Our drawings are really the baseline of all of our data following into your system and then being followed through into your work orders and back into the financial capital delivery system. And then last but not least, it's very important for us to always continuously improve. One thing that came out of this project was, I think, maybe a new term that's being coined, which is the mean time between whole asset replacement. So quite often we look at maintenance from a perspective of mean time between failure. But actually, if you bring that measure up one layer at the capital delivery program or asset management program, you could look at the iterations of replacements for a piece of equipment and understand if we're replacing assets in a smaller time frame, or if we're doing the right job, it'd be a longer time frame. So the mean time between whole asset replacements would then become a very valuable measure to understand if we are effective at managing our physical infrastructure on a state of good repair program. So it would be installed once, and as the assets mature and go through a natural replacement cycle, how long did that take? And to continuously measure that as time goes by to understand, are we getting better asset management or is there opportunities for improvement? So I think this is a great way to understand that. Thanks, Nicole. So what's the Canadian context? So I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the Canadian Core Public Infrastructure Survey that occurs every couple of years. But just to give you, I'm probably going to skip going through all this detail, but we essentially in Canada own $2.1 trillion worth of assets, and that's excluding housing. If you look at the state of good repair and the condition of those assets, there's a significant portion that are in the fair, poor, and very poor condition. The analysis that we did was we looked at, different types of assessments over the years, and one thing is for sure is the conditions are not getting better. There's a significant amount of assets that are in good condition, and it is it's important for us to maintain those assets in good condition and to prevent them from moving into fair, poor, and very poor condition, all of which those conditions indicate a unacceptable condition. And as the condition grades deteriorate, so does the likelihood of failure and the risks to the services, or let's call it the value that those assets were intended to provide. When we looked at the types of assets that are, most prevalent or at risk, it moves from roads, bridges, and water infrastructure. They kind of make up the bulk of the infrastructure that's kind of in focus for improvement. So it's quite a big number, and I think it's quite a big challenge for maintenance professionals and organizations to leverage maintenance to help two things. One is restore condition at the lowest cost and maintain current conditions at the lowest cost, all of which reducing risk to residents that we serve. Yep, next slide, please. So I wanted to share a little bit around the municipal surveys, current state successes and opportunities for improvement. So it's not all bad. There's a lot of good stuff happening out in the municipalities, certainly around asset management plans and so forth. It was great to see Ontario being the largest participant in the survey, followed by Alberta, and then other provinces made up the remainder, and British Columbia making up the smaller. This is not supposed to be 100%. These are all kind of cherry picking the top contributors. We had a lot of large populations contribute to the national survey. They were over 400,000 residents, followed by, I guess, joint, small, and medium municipalities. And if you look at the roles that were involved, a high degree were in asset management, followed by management roles, and then asset management specializations, and the remainder 1% were other roles as well. So it was a great cross section between provinces that were involved, municipalities and their sizes and the different roles. I just wanted to say that the questionnaire was over 180 questions. So there was a lot of information, and I don't believe there's ever been a survey that has been quite broad and in depth. So I was really, the results were quite interesting. Yeah. So if you look at the asset classes as well that participated, when we look at asset management, obviously they're involved in more than one asset class. But just kind of giving you the overall perspective, we had roads contributing to the highest asset class that, let's say, that participated in giving us information. So asset managers were responsible mostly for roads, water and wastewater infrastructure, followed by bridge, culverts, stormwater, and then public buildings, fleet. So this kind of gives a little bit more of a granular view of the types of asset types that we are responsible for as public service asset managers and maintenance managers. So it's somewhat kind of an even spread, I guess, but there's some deviation between roads and I would say water and bridges. Next slide. And just to cherry pick some numbers out of the survey insights, which is part of the white paper, business case, and the practitioner's guide. So only a minority of municipalities considered future life cycle costs in their procurement. So it really highlights a prevalent issue of overlooking long-term financial implications. I guess the lack of comprehensive life cycle costings does underscore a critical area for enhancement, certainly from financial planning, but also from a maintenance readiness perspective. Liability engineering. So while not really widespread, it was quite a low percentage. Some municipalities have established dedicated liability engineering structures, which is really promising. And there's a lot of good municipalities out there that are kind of leading the way in what I would say is asset management, maintenance management, or liability engineering good practices. A broad range are kind of indicated that they're planning to get started. So there was a lot of awareness, but some municipalities are just ahead of the game, that's all. For asset master data, like descriptions, classifications, and maintenance data, it looked like the commissioning stage had the lowest response rates compared to operations and maintenance. So when we looked at all of the different types of master data, we asked, what life cycle stage do you first encounter this, or where is it coming from? And very little was coming from the initial stages of the asset life cycle. So it kind of looks like when operations and maintenance get the assets, they are typically getting all that information while they're also maintaining the asset. So perhaps there's some conflict if you're trying to maintain the assets and build up, or some inefficiencies, I guess, in doing it that way. Over 54.2% of organizations were unclear on how regulations were helping them to improve their maintenance planning. So there was a question there around is there support from regulators or regulations that help the organizations, foster a culture around good maintenance planning? And it looked like the majority are not so clear on that being in place. Challenges for data integration. So data fragmentation was evident from the data, with information scattered across documents reported by 36.5% of municipalities and multiple systems being reported. So essentially, the asset classes that we looked at and the people who participated identified over 40 systems that they have to use to manage their assets, which is quite a lot. So there's a lot of complexity in the, let's call it the ecosystem of systems that are being used across municipalities. And that in itself does create some barriers that are expanded upon in the white paper and the business case. Some of the system challenges, not surprising because I'm in the same boat here myself. I rely a lot on Excel, and it looks like so does everybody else. So 75.5% respondents still rely on Excel for asset management, decision-making, and data management. It indicates that it's widespread use despite the availability of more specialized tools. It does indicate a lack of standard systems and perhaps a barrier towards the development of standard data and information specifications for management functions. I think this is a huge hurdle. I know in Canada we don't have data standards. We don't have what I would think about is regulations or a federal approach for asset management and kind of cascading out to the municipalities so that when we try to, make the most value from our data, it's structured very similarly across Canada. In other words, we can share information, we can learn from each other, we can share databases and think about the value that that would generate for Canada. It looks like we've got a big hurdle here, but those hurdles are simultaneously opportunities for improvement. Thank you, Nicole. I think this is my last slide. I think I'm okay for time. Just wanted to share a little bit around. I did talk a little bit about this stage in our journey on what we want to do. So the delivery of a dedicated public sector maintenance management readiness course is being developed right now. So that's a pretty exciting development. And there's lots of talks about how do we integrate or institutionalize maintenance management reliability into different types of institutes, ranging from trade schools all the way through to third level education. We're also collaborating with the Canadian Infrastructure Benchmarking Initiative, and we're doing this by working through PEMAC Asset Management and through the Public Service Asset Management Committee. And we're going to be recommending KPIs to help develop more visibility around maintenance management through this existing network. So that's an exciting project that we're looking to get started. And of course, we're looking to, within the PEMAC Asset Management Association, is to develop more strategic initiatives through our volunteer base to look at how we can leverage what we've learned as a springboard into developing more solutions, more training, and how do we, engage the community to grow to, what we envision for the future of public sector asset management. Yeah, and that's it. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks, Philip. I'll pass it over to Cindy Snedden, who will be our moderator for today's panel discussion.
Thanks very much, Nicole, Philip. And I just want to briefly mention that Nicole was really instrumental in this whole project as a sort of overall project manager, and none of she made a lot of it possible as well.
I agree. Absolutely.
So thank you very much, Philip. Just maybe I'll start with you and I'll ask each of you the same question, is if you don't mind to tell briefly about your professional background, your current role, and why this topic came to the forefront for you. Like what's your passion around it? Obviously, a lot of that came through, but just a little bit more. And then I'll ask Peter and Michael the same.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. You know what? Sometimes I think that maintenance is probably all I know because it's all I've been doing since I've been working. So I've been a maintenance manager since I was 23, and I'm 46 now. And I've had lots of roles. My background is actually through the trades. So in Canada, you have millwrights, and that's where I started my career. And I worked through every role, through supervision, through the management, maintenance consultancy. And I've been passionate about maintenance, and I've seen from the trade perspective, management perspective, customers perspective. And because of my experience, obviously I'm from Ireland, not Newfoundland. Some people do think that, but I got the opportunity to work with some really great people who has inspired me a lot in my early days. I got to work in a lot of companies across Europe, and I've seen what's possible. And coming to Canada, I'm able to, see so much opportunity. And that's what drives me. What I see is that we have huge capability to do more. And there's nothing stopping us, but we just need to articulate, especially for maintenance. Maintenance people are generally hardworking people. We're busy people. We have a lot on our plates. It's a complex side of the business. And we just don't perhaps articulate our needs in the right way. And that's what I'm going to champion. I'm going to champion the message around the value that maintenance can bring to public sector assets. And what I'm seeing is it's possible. It's going to happen.
Thank you, Peter.
So my background was basically as a mechanical engineer, and it sort of weaved a little bit, but basically pretty early on, I was exposed to the world of maintenance. I was working at a company that built diagnostic equipment for motors and generators. And essentially, that really exposed me to working around really large equipment and infrastructure. And, it's something kind of cool when you get to see sort of what makes our world possible when you're standing in front of a 50-foot generator and a huge dam that's been there for 70 years. And it gives you a lot of appreciation for the world that's been built for us and that we are essentially stewards of. And so, working in hydro, working in steel at Dofasco, sort of really solidified my interest and experience in reliability and maintenance, being a part of a team that was really responsible for keeping, an entire plant running and making money and dealing with daily challenges. It was fascinating, the kind of things that came up, and you get to appreciate sort of how everybody contributes just a little bit. And probably Philip, I'm sure, would echo this, but engineers are sort of a small piece of that. It was the experience of the operators and the tradespeople, the millwrights, the electricians, that really, you really start to appreciate, what it takes to keep all our infrastructure, all our equipment running. So, sort of being here at the city in this role, I agree. Everything keeps going because of the diligent and some of the brilliant people we have working at all levels. But really what's sort of missing that I've been exposed to in other industries is sort of this concerted effort to make maintenance a higher priority, to help people understand the role it can play in extending asset life and meeting our service requirements and goals. And so that's sort of been with me from the beginning. But even I would say my experience at Toronto Water and what brought me into this is just how do we get that information? How do we give people and empower them with what they need to do their jobs well? And this has been sort of a recurring theme in my 10 years here at the city. And we're making progress on it, but it's a long-standing goal of just, we have all these brilliant people, these hardworking people. Now, how do we empower them to really do everything they can and make their lives easier so they can focus on really just keeping our assets going and extending the life and producing value? So that's sort of why I'm in this. It's an interesting nut to crack, and I work with great people. And so that also makes it very interesting and very, very enriching.
Yeah,
Correct.
Michael.
Yeah,
And
thanks,
questions
Cindy.
are coming in while you're doing
Okay.
this. Great.
Uh,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll keep it short then. Thanks, Cindy. I think Peter and Philip already took it out of my mouth. You said it all, but I'll just add to that. My background has always been in project management. Then I believe back in 2016, 17, I flipped in fully into asset management. And there's no way to disconnect one or the other. You still lead project because you're building infrastructure. But my desire to get into this field is more about the community, caring for our community. And similar to Peter, you see assets here and there. And in my mind, I always figure, how do you build this? How do you start from scratch? Then when I get into the field, it's more of the disconnect in there. There's always a disconnection between maintenance folks and maybe the planning folks, like Philip said in the presentation earlier, or finance, or we all want different needs. Engineers want something different from what finance has money for. So how can we work collaboratively together as a team to achieve one common goal? Good governance, good data-driven decision-making process. And that was what actually I find the most fascinating in the job we do, working with different folks and letting them understand, it's not just about building an asset. You have to start from the planning stage up until when that asset gets deteriorated or disposed. So it's a very engaging career for me. I'm learning a lot, like Philip said. It's always an opportunity to pick new thing and use it to develop more. And that's that's why I jumped into this community of maintenance and asset management, and hopefully we'll be able to build up from there.
You all.
Thank-
I'm gonna just start with some questions from my list, if you don't mind. So Peter, if you could start, what could you say is the state of maintenance management readiness for Toronto Water? What have you been able to achieve in this path here?
Okay. So essentially for Toronto Water, we've been focusing in the past. We have a lot of capital project's been going on for the last 10 years and 10 years in the future, massive budgets towards this, which is fantastic. But the challenge has always been, for my group, we are supposed to sort of have equipment commissioned, handed over to the city, and we start operating it. Well, with that operation, obviously there comes the need for maintenance. So how do we prevent our equipment from breaking very early on? How do we establish our practices around maintenance so that we start maintaining our equipment right away and get that value out of it? We've been working in the last, for a while, even before myself, so more than 10 years, with essentially how do we get data? What kind of data do we want to help us figure out what kind of maintenance needs to be done? How do we get that information? When do we get it? Who can provide it? And then what do we do with it? So the state of Toronto Water right now, if I focus on this small piece of the puzzle, is really we have contracts written that essentially ask for consultants, so the designers of our equipment and the constructors, the builders of it, to provide things like manuals, to provide training. They provide asset information on all the assets coming. And the goal is to get that at different stages of the design and construction. So we have a high level amount of information around the assets, what type they are, that we would get in design. They have tags, so that's another aspect of it. And then essentially during the construction process, when they've selected all the equipment, we get more detailed information, including maintenance, warranty, what kind of asset it is, who makes it. And the challenge then becomes, once we get all that information, how quickly can sort of my group take that information and start to embed it in our system? So we have an asset inventory, our CMMS. We have, maintenance that has to be developed, equipment maintenance plans or preventive maintenance plans, PMs that have to be developed, and that takes time. And at that point, we can, institute those and roll them out to the maintenance people and the operations people. So this is a process we've been working on for many years, and we're getting much better at it. But the challenge always is, how do we get that information at the right time, quickly enough? And then how do we turn it around in a way that we can meet those goals of having maintenance ready for operation? And just a couple of small things. So one, as I mentioned, these contracts, which we've been, I've been working on a team to sort of further develop and try to really nail down schedules on that. The other piece of it that's recent is my manager of our group has actually been really proactive in creating a project team. So, I work on maintenance and reliability. We have maintenance planners and schedulers. We have asset management engineers. But two pieces that have come recently are we have a focus on asset information. So we have an engineer, a senior engineer named Tony, who is sort of leading that and trying to really develop standards around our data so that we can apply that. And the other piece is a capital group. So we have a new senior engineer who's managing a team of engineers that are supporting just the capital team. So all new projects will go through the same process to bring in that data and bring it forward so that we can set it up for when the equipment is commissioned and handed over. So these are a few initiatives we're working on. We obviously have a long way to go, and we're working through bugs, but this has sort of been the strategy: is get that information early from the consultants and designers and builders, and then we can massage that and have enough time to implement it, and then building around that feedback loop. So once we've done these PMs for a couple of years and our staff have experience, we can feed back and refine that process. And that's more of the reliability and maintenance side that I am leading. So
it sounds like it's very well aware and progress being made over years. How about you where you are, Michael? The City of Niagara.
So I think I'll just take some of the point Peter mentioned, and that is always the capital group and the maintenance operation teams. There's always going to be a gap in what they want. Everybody wants different things, but what we see is that finance, we don't have funds sometimes, and when operation teams want money to be able to maintain their asset, or they need this or they need that, we are always at that verge of, okay, but we are not ready. We don't have that money. And I believe that goes back to understanding what actually is the need, what is the want. And I think Peter actually mentioned that. So ability to be able to have more training, let people participate in, webinars like this, join webcasts, participate. There's a lot of not-for-profit organizations that do a lot of good work here in Canada. I think Philip alluded to it at the beginning that Canada is still a little bit behind when it comes to maintenance readiness, and that's because people do things however it works for the organization. But should we be having a good, public sector alliance? We are all doing most the same things to this asset. So where should we have that point of connect to do the same thing, or have tech memos or template of doing the same things in the same fashion? And I believe leveraging those training, leveraging whatever data you have available right now, start keeping track of work instructions, different methodologies that you think would help your team, would be some of the things I would like to add to that. But many people really do not take advantage of others as well. Municipalities are not in competition. Public sector is not in competition. Ask others, what are you doing? How is it working for you? Can I learn from what you're doing? I think some of those things are really important when it comes to getting yourself ready for maintenance readiness. I would say people should do.
Obviously, a real common theme is the definition of asset management, the coordinated effort to realize value. And of course, it's coordinated vertically and horizontally in the organization. And now you're talking about coordination between organizations. So really, this collaboration can go a long way to advancing quickly, I think. I'm going to take a question. Maybe I'll pose it to Philip from the floor. How do you look at the disparate and common overlapping roles? So this again goes back to coordination between reliability engineers and asset managers. Traditionally, a pavement engineer, bridge engineer, municipal engineer would naturally take care of reliability issues from their own due perspectives of reliability.
I think, I guess my opinion is that I would see reliability engineering as a standalone function. And the reason why I would say that is because there's a level of independence that you want around the data interpretation. And not only that, things are not going to be going well when you're analyzing your data. There's going to be opportunities for improvement, which does require some dedicated resources to not just do, project management. It's actually the whole idea that we want to restore asset conditions and we want to, follow a dedicated set of rules doing that. I think it might be a bit too much work to do your project management and reliability engineering effectively. Depending on your organization, let's be fair, like the business casing for a reliability engineer is all about, ensuring assets have the optimum tactics in place for every asset, the right combination of predictive, preventative, run to failure, and if needed, redesign. And that every time we bring an asset into our business, we purposefully decide on the optimum tactics based on its application. And we walk away from it saying, we know it's doing the right thing. Then the other part is to understand, is it actually performing and adding value? And course correcting over time. And depending on your asset portfolio, that's a huge endeavor. So I think a reliability engineer on its own, and from my own perspective, I've got a reliability engineer in my team who just looks after reliability engineering work. And it's a role and a discipline on its own. I'm not sure I answered the question. I guess the point is, if you can afford one, get one, because they're valuable. Thanks, Cindy.
I guess I'd like to jump in. So to echo some of that, I mean, I agree. I think having been a reliability engineer in that specific role before the city, and even initially when I started at the city, I would say it is quite different. You really are just focusing on looking at the equipment and really making sure that it's sort of, you're maximizing your availability, the ability to operate that equipment at basically the lowest cost. So you're really trying to look at cost, and you're trying to look at the reliability of that equipment, and you're constantly analyzing information, and you may be looking at failures and looking at ways to maybe tweak your maintenance plans to suit those, or to get a better end result. You might also be feeding into the asset management program. I mean, a part of our asset management programs obviously we have to demonstrate that sort of we have maintenance plans in place. And so, maintenance engineers would be involved in that, and reliability engineers would be involved in those aspects of it. But I kind of alluded to before is this feedback cycle, and that's sort of where I feel the reliability engineers have a strong role to play, which is we set up an initial system to get us going when equipment is handed over. But that could be the first kick, right? The first kick at the can. Essentially, an organization really builds up a lot of experience over time as we operate equipment, as we run equipment. And sort of a reliability engineer's role is to sort of help further that with the operations and maintenance team, and document some of that, but also investigate where maybe things from design or maybe things from initially were not being achieved. So I see it as different, but obviously the two play hand in hand. Asset managers are looking maybe at a sort of slightly higher level, well, definitely at a higher level, but as a reliability engineer, I've provided feedback in terms of equipment's performance, in terms of degradation, that have been useful in sort of decision making related to asset management. So, I still feel like Philip, they are very separate roles, but obviously, like many things in this business, asset management is a large umbrella, and so everybody has a part to play. But I would recommend trying to keep them somewhat separate. That's been a challenge for me at the city, actually, but I'll be getting back to that role now that we have more people on our team.
And I think one thing is that maybe, I don't know if there's anyone representing small municipalities on the call, but coordination is hard when you have a large complex organization. It's easier when you have a small organization, but you have the same actually number of things to coordinate. So the overwhelm, like I don't know, what could you say or as maybe as a helper to a small municipality in this endeavor?
I can start
Yeah.
that one. Well, I think I'll use the word small relatively to the question as well. So when you're when you're a small municipality, start small. But I think most folks would love to create a robust plan to say, hey, we'll do this, we'll do that over the time horizon of 5 or 3 years. But the reality, you may not have the funds, like Peter said earlier, you may not have the funds where necessary, even if you love to do things. So how do you beat that curveball? Is start with whatever data you're able to gather. You may not make any sense of it at this point, or there may be some nuances, but whatever it is you're gathering, it may be useful for you along the line in that regard, right? And also, I think leveraging a lot of standards, webinars, training, I mentioned that earlier, that people are doing and hear what others are saying is very important. I think one thing that we've seen in Canada is, even though we may be behind in maintenance readiness for equipment or our asset management, one thing that we started to do very well is there are these organizations, PEMAC, there's NAMS+, there are different ones. FCM is really helping to coordinate everyone to come together. And you can reach out to them to ask questions, right? So build those good practices. I think for small municipalities, one thing that is also problematic is you may be doing maintenance, but they are not calling it that. And there's one person who's been doing it for the past 35 years. The whole knowledge is up here. It's not written down anywhere. So how can you extrapolate all of that information, start creating a tech memo, SOPs, guidelines, whatever it is, start documenting all of that somewhere so that, when you have employee turnover, you are able to reflect back on processes. Then manuals, whatever manuals you have of your equipment, read them. Start creating work instruction. There needs to be a pattern of how you maintain your asset, not just we have this money today, we want to do this, or we like to do this. Is it required? Are you spending too much? Are you spending too little? Those are the critical questions I would expect our small municipalities to start thinking about. Then I think you mentioned assurance earlier in terms of value is one thing we want from our asset, but then how can you create assurance and build that into your processes for the guidelines or your business model in the way you do your approaches for business. So I think utilizing different maintenance standards out there, utilizing different guidelines. There are different ways one will be able to maintain or manage in a small municipality, and just familiarize yourself with your asset, familiarize yourself with your equipment, know what you have so you can build, what's proper for it. Don't wait until you have everything before you start. Have the end in mind at the beginning, throughout the life cycle of the asset. That's what I would say.
Thank you, everybody. I think we go for a long time, but we only have 4 minutes. So one thing I think for sure, if Canada's behind in maintenance readiness, then PEMAC has a large responsibility to advance the conversation, and we're going to take that very seriously. So this is a wonderful starting point, and the work that's been done is an amazing, amazing foundation for that. And I noticed Arnold's in the comments, inspired as an educator to think about how civil engineering education could be changed and improved to account for reliability. So it's just Arnold has the opportunity to do that. So it's obviously one conversation can make a big difference. So we'll keep going with this. I'm just going to turn it back to Nicole briefly to highlight the 3 documents that have been produced and make sure people know how to read them. And again, as a starting point, and for continuing this conversation.
Thanks so much, Cindy, and the panelists. Great questions and insights for sure. And I just want to point everybody to a new page that we have on PEMAC.org. So you can certainly visit our website to learn more about this project. There's a new item in the menu, the case for maintenance management readiness. You can scan this QR code or certainly visit our website, PEMAC.org/case maintenance management readiness, and find a lot more details and insights about the project and the outcomes, as well as download these 3 guides. There's as Philip outlined, a practitioner's guide. We have an in-depth white paper, as well as a business case that you'll be able to utilize and access. And so these documents and that site is available both in English and French. And we will also be using this webcast as a support tool on that page as well in the coming days. So certainly stop there and access any of these documents. That I also will share that are certainly beneficial for those in the public sector, but by all means, all of these learnings can also be attributed to organizations across all sectors. And so definitely, if you're not in the public sector, you still will find a lot of benefit and guidance through all of these pieces, no matter what type of assets you manage and what type of industry or sector that you're in. So thank you very much to everyone for today's webcast, joining us today.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.